Again, folks, Brad here again, working on, can you imagine that? A car that isn't my S2000. This is a friend of mine's car. Actually, it's their son's car. It's an old kind of piece of crap car. It's nice, it's good for them, not terribly expensive, and this thing has a bad tie rod end. I've already taken the wheel off to confirm that, but this is, I was going to get to it today. You saw my video yesterday, perhaps if you did, of my oil change on my S2000. Well, I figured I better do that first, and now I can work on my friend's cars. So, easiest way to tell if there's something really wrong with the front end of your car is to do this. So let me put the camera down, and I'll show you. There should be no play in the wheel. Here, let's see. So, best thing to do, other than the crazy loud howling sound this thing made as I drove it down the street at any speed, frankly, even like 30, 40 miles an hour, it started just really howling. First thing I did was check the, obviously check the tires, something simple like that, but took it off, noticed the wheels were fine, but upon jacking it up, before even taking the wheel off, you do that, feel that play. Now, that could, people say that could be just a play in the steering rack, but I know that it's not, because you can feel it click, and the steering wheel doesn't actually move. The other side of the car is on the ground too, so yes, they can move a little, but this, if anything makes that sound and wobbles like that, not top to bottom, like the good old days of kingpins, you could check your kingpin run or play, but that's terrible. I also confirmed that with the other side. When I jacked it up, there was no play at all. That tie rod end is fine. So here I go to attack this thing, and as always, you'll always hear me say, jack the car up. I use the frame rail because I got a big nice floor jack, and then put a jack stand underneath. Always to be safe. Slowly drop the car down onto the jack stand, but keep the jack there obviously for a backup. So that's what we'll do. And now I'm going to take the wheel off. This is an old car. It's a 2004. Frankly, it's newer than my S2000, but has seen a few better days, unfortunately. This one has way more kilometers on it too. We're up to 250,000 almost, I think. Anyway, so let's. Here's the tie rod end I'm looking at, and when I wiggle it like that, you see how this part actually stays, and then the steering knuckle, or whatever this thing's called, the hub rather, moves along. So that's clearly the problem, and that's clearly what we're going to attack today. So, to be honest, I've never actually done one of these, but I've seen enough videos and I've done enough wrenching on cars, I'm not afraid of it. The other thing to look out for, as other people will tell you, whenever you do anything with the steering, you're going to mess with the alignment. So what I'm going to do, like this is how they adjust toe in, because you can adjust obviously on the steering arm here, which is the, excuse me, the outer tie rod and the inner tie rod, which I'm not worried about. I'm just going to do the easy one here, but I'm going to mark this, measure it, and then also count the number of times that I have to undo it in full turns, so that when I put the new one on, I can get it kind of close. That's of course presuming that the new one is exactly the same size as well. Which surprisingly, I watched a video recently, actually Chris Fix, thanks for those videos, where they weren't exactly the same, and that's a bit strange. I'm going to spray this with some WD, this one too, to try to help get it off. I'm going to mark this and measure it somehow. I'll figure that out. Probably just end up counting back. But if I crack this lock nut just enough to get this thing loose, and then I kind of put it back in position, that's obviously also a good marker for how far to crank the new tie rod end in. So let me get on with that. All right, so I've got I put a swivel on this thing too, just because it's a slight angle. Let's give it a shot, see if it comes off. Whoa, that was easy, but be careful, that can happen too. Clearly that's not an air ratchet universal joint, so I should have been a little more careful, but luckily I didn't get hurt. I was a little overzealous perhaps, came off a lot easier. A simple wrench would have been easier, but what the hell, got him, try it. There, I got it apart, just took a little extra persuasion, so there we go. A quick, again, rudimentary test of the inner tie rod seems to be that it's all right. It's pretty stiff in there. This is, I think these things should move a little easier than that. Again, I'm a little out of my depth because I haven't actually done too many of these. Probably 10 years ago was the last one, but there's no discernible play in that. Maybe it's a little stiff, that's fine. For a car like this, let's start with the easy one. So, there we go. All right. Quarter turn, I took that off. Maybe I'll do it one more half, or one more quarter rather. turn, so I just didn't do what I said I was going to do. So, okay, so it was there. That's 1, and 19. What we do? 20, 19 and a quarter. So I'm going to say it again so I remember. 19 and a quarter to get this off. So that's when I get the new one. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it back on. Okay, I got this thing in. Like I say, I cranked it on 19 and 3/4 turns simply because I had to have it pointing up. That'll be close enough. I just snugged the nut against the rod to kind of keep it in place. I'll tighten that down once I have the torque setting properly done on the top, which I read is 50 pounds, but I'm going to do it at 40 to start, just to make sure that it's I'm not over tightening it, just a bit. You kind of do it in steps. This is a bit, me being a bit cautious, but you know, you do what you do. And it did come with the old one was just a nylock nut, looks like. So actually it wasn't even that. So what this is the old one. It would just, you sometimes a nylock nut has a little ring of nylon here, which will actually act as the lock nut. This one doesn't, so it's got the castellated nut. Oddly enough, it's because it's, according to people, it looks like a castle. Strange. So what this does, of course, it just allows you to put a cotter pin in. So let me just crank this thing down a little bit and see if I can get to the 40 pound. And I put it back to 32, give or take. And then it wasn't very elegant, but you just push the pin through here. You know, you line it up, pin it through there, and then you just bend. Some people just bend one side of the pin back. I bend two. That's what the hell. It's there, and now again, there's zero play back and forth with the new rod end in there, and I'm going to cinch up the. You know, you got to make sure you do this too. You cinch up the. This they say is 22 pounds. So it's not a ton, so I can eyeball that. Plus, it's clearly bottoming against the new rod end, so that's not going anywhere. I'll double check that once more just to be safe, because you know, I'll put the wheel back on and then I'll never touch it again. There, it's not moving at all. Now let's put the wheel on to see, you get a little more leverage and see if there's any play in it at all. Obviously we'll expect zero, but let's make sure. So hang on one sec while I put the wheel back on. Now remember, before there was all that play. Now you can't hear anything, and there's none at all, and certainly none top to bottom either still. And then we're good. So, and now I'm just going to, you know, again, double check I got everything on. Certainly did. Torque this things down to where I'm comfortable with them. I'm moving my crap out of the way of the car. And then we'll put this thing down and we'll take it for a spin. I am actually pretty curious to see if the noise, that the howl, as you've heard me describe, is gone. Because if it isn't this, I don't really know what else it could be at the moment. Wheel bearing, of course, but it's in gear so it won't spin. But I didn't notice any, you know, run out. The disc itself, again, you can't pull it forward and back, so there's not a lot of run out maybe in that way, I guess they would call that. I'm not an expert there, but this thing seems solid, and as solid as the other side, which is not making noise. So let me throw this thing down and let's take it for a spin. All right, now I have the car together and I'm taking it out for a good shakedown run here in a later evening. Now that it's all together, I've cleaned myself up. So, best thing to report right away is the howl is gone. That was a pretty aggressive, really loud howl out of the left side of the car. You can still hear some tire noise, but that's mostly due to the fact that these are winter tires in September. Hey, I just fix them, I don't judge. Anyway, so big thumbs up for that. As I say, no more howl, no more weird noises, no vibration through the steering wheel. All that stuff is nice and tight, as you should expect after you saw the play that we took out. Second thing is, obviously, the steering wheel is out. So, as I say, you'll have to have an alignment done, or this thing will have to have an alignment done, there's no question. But given that it's tracking pretty straight, like here I am taking my hands off the wheel at 50 miles an hour, you know, in 90K or so, it's pretty decent, it turns okay. You know, there's no particularly loud tire noise, as it's scuffing and things like that if the toe was particularly bad. So I would say by all points this is a success for the $60 the part cost, and ultimately it came off so quickly that so easily that I would call this, if you had the part in your hand and the bolts weren't too tight or rusty or anything, you could do this in under an hour. So, you know, take that for what it is. You know, anyone, whether you're experienced or not, you know, maybe this video, if you're not experienced, I hope this video gave you some confidence, because this is all there is to it. You know, if you can unbolt and bolt back up parts that come off, you have to build the part, you just have to install it. It's just undo it, put it back on, tighten it up. The only tricky part with this one was, again, making sure you were close. Again, I got as close as I could with the 19, and in this case 3/4 turns to get the thing on, because of course I had to end pointing up. So I'm a half a turn too much. That could be why it's clearly why the steering wheel's out, but when the alignment is done, it'll fix that. So you know what, again, especially if you guys are new to wrenching, I encourage you strongly to watch some of these videos, myself and others. That Chris Fix, you've heard me mention him, he's got a ton of videos out there, more than I could ever do at the moment. So, you know, have a look at it, get your tools out, don't be shy. Don't start on your dad's 911, but at least you could start on a car like this, where the consequences aren't too dear if you don't happen to have it done up the right way. Anyway, but with this little bit of knowledge and a little bit of effort, you can save yourself a ton of cash. So anyway, once again, this is Brad from Brad on Cars. You know, if this video was useful to you, please throw me a like. I'd appreciate it. It also encourages me to make a few more of these things, because I've been wrenching on cars a while now, and I'm happy to share my experience.